for me, I've always been very open about how hard each and every journey has been, or how unique each and every journey has been. And so I think that journey specifically provided me with the message to other people that it's gonna be hard. Sometimes it's gonna take way longer than you want. There are gonna be days when you think, okay, this isn't for me. But if you just push through those difficult moments, on the other side of that, that is where your achievements come in. That is where you reach your goals. That's where the magic happens. And so my journey allowed me to give that message to other people. And for that, I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful, and I wouldn't change a thing about it.
Hi guys, my name is Yvette Garcia and welcome to Permission to Prosper. I am so excited that you guys are with us today because I have a wonderful guest that I am so excited for you guys to meet. She is an awesome woman that sparks joy wherever she goes, a real go-getter, former Miss New Mexico 2017, and host of the Pretty Happy podcast. Please welcome Miss ASHLEY MORA. I'm so happy that you're here with us today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone.
Please tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
So I am 29 years old. I was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I cheered at the University of New Mexico my first year in college. I graduated with my degree in marketing. And then after that, I was actually still in the process of competing for Miss New Mexico. So I did that for 8 years. And then on my 8th try, I ended up winning the title of Miss New Mexico, which was super exciting. And now I work for Southwest Airlines and I live in San Diego.
That is amazing. Now, tell me a little bit about that. So you said that you were Miss New Mexico and you won on your 8th try.
Yes.
So elaborate a little bit on what that looked like for you.
So this was a dream that was planted in my heart for as long as I can remember. Like, I feel like most other kids growing up, you know, you would ask them what they wanted to be and people would say like, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a veterinarian or whatever. And my answer was always Miss USA. I watched it as a young girl. I thought the glamour of like the evening gowns and everything was just, I thought it was this glamorous life and I wanted to do that. So when I got a little bit older and I understood a little bit more about what being Miss New Mexico or being Miss USA entailed, that it was more than just these beautiful gowns. It was community service and living in purpose and intention. It really like struck my heart. And I was like, I know that I could be that person for other people. I know that this is something that I can do. So I started competing and I made the top 5 every single year. And it was definitely, there was a lot of heartache in the years that I didn't win, getting so close, but not actually achieving that dream. It was difficult, but at the same time, I always took every year that I didn't win, because essentially when you don't win, that's being told no, right? I took it as constructive criticism, and I would always ask, okay, well, what can I do to better myself for the next year? And I never really took it personally necessarily. I just took it as something that I could work on. So each and every year, there would be different things that I needed to work on. And then, funny story actually, so my last year that I competed, I actually wasn't going to compete.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep, because at this point I had been 7 years, and after my 7th time, I was first runner-up that year, so second place, so close. I was actually, so when you get into the final 2, the last 2 girls always hold hands, and so I was holding hands with the girl who ended up winning, and I felt that year like I was going to win. I had like an amazing interview. If you don't know, there's all of these different components that go into competing. So there's private interview, which is where you get interviewed by 10 or 15 people in a private interview. Then you have all of your onstage competition, which is evening gown, swimwear, and then you also have an onstage question. So there's all of these different components, and that year specifically, I felt like, you know when you do something and you kind of feel like you did a good job?
Yes.
Like, you know, you maybe like nailed the interview question or whatever. I felt that year like I had done everything I needed to do. I just felt like I was going to win. So when I was standing there in that moment, I was like, oh, they're for sure gonna call my name. Like, this is it, this is my year, and then they didn't. And I was heartbroken. It was really, really difficult for me that year. And also because it had been so long, 7 years competing, also I'm in my like mid-20s at this point. After that, I was like, okay, I need to walk away from this because I need to move on with my life. I need to move on with my career. If anyone has ever been like involved in like pageantry or whatever, it takes so much time preparing. So it was like holding me back in a lot of my relationships. And I was at a point where I was like, maybe this isn't it for me and I need to like move on. So that was kind of the mindset that I had. And then that year goes on, and right before the pageant that year in 2017, I kind of just had this moment where I was like, this was my last year to compete. The next year I wouldn't be able to because I would age out. I was already to the age where you age out. And so I thought, if I don't try one more time, I will regret this for the rest of my life. I will regret it forever. I have one more shot. Like, what if I'm giving up too soon? I just got goosebumps just like thinking about it. And so I thought, I called the director and I said, because it was already close to when you could enter to compete and everything. I said, is there any way that I can still compete this year? So I ended up being able to compete. And it was so funny because every single year prior, I had done all of this training. I had done working out with personal trainers. I had done interview coaching with interview coaches all over the world. And I usually would always buy like a new wardrobe, new interview outfit, new evening gown, all of this stuff, right? I do this stuff every single year. Well, this year, because I decided to compete so last minute, I hadn't done any of that. I didn't have any interview coaching. I had not been working out with a trainer. Thank goodness I was like still relatively like good shape, but hadn't been working out with a trainer, and I didn't buy any new clothes, which is kind of crazy if you're in the industry, you know, like it's kind of, you can wear the same dress, but there sometimes are people there who have like seen the girls compete prior. So I hadn't bought a new dress. It was a dress that I had already had in my closet. And yeah, so I went in and I was like, this is so weird. This is so like any other year because I have no training this year. I don't know. I'm just going to rely on like everything that I've done in the past. And I think that is kind of what led me to win the year that I did, because I went in with this very carefree attitude, and I went in with this mindset of like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, rather than I think before it was, and I don't think that I necessarily knew it and it wasn't like intentional or malicious, but I just think I was very competitive every other year. And this year, the year that I won, I was like, it is what it is.
You had released all of the pressure on yourself and like what it should be. And it was just giving yourself one last opportunity to do something that you were happy about. Right. And I feel like the universe just instantly responded with that, right? That is just so, so amazing. I love that. Isn't that just so funny, right? Like when you lose something even around the house, I think sometimes you are like stressing yourself out over all of the little details of where it could be. And then something like that happens where you just let it go and you'll be somewhere else and you're like, oh, I know. And I love that so much that you went through this constant, right? And just this battle in your head of like, should I do this? Should I not? And I think it's just such a beautiful moment that you actually took the time to still go for it and give yourself that opportunity. How do you feel that, you know, things in your childhood help you get to that moment?
So both my parents are very hardworking individuals, and my dad is also a very competitive person, and they're both very tenacious in everything that they do. And so I feel like from a very young age, they instilled in me to never quit, whatever it was, you know, doing laundry or whatever. It was like, you're going to do everything 100% and follow through with whatever it is that you do. And so there was that component of it. And then I think also I have to really thank them too, because they've always supported me and believed in me and whatever it is that I'm doing. And so I think I knew that I would be Miss New Mexico USA one day. And I think having them reaffirm that belief also like set me up to never give up. So I have to really thank them, because I wouldn't be where I am today without them.
I love that. I love that. And what did that moment mean to you? Because it was your 8th year, you know, competing.
Yeah.
Put me in that moment.
I mean, so I'm in this position, right? And it was almost like deja vu. It's the final 2, and I'm holding hands with the other girl. And I had this really weird sense of like calmness at that moment. I was on stage, I was holding hands, I had been in this position before, and I didn't necessarily have a feeling that I was going to win, but I didn't necessarily have a feeling that I was going to lose either. So I'm standing there just like very peaceful and also very, very confident in the work that I did do. So like I said, we do the onstage question, which is always nerve-wracking.
Right,
and
yeah.
I was very proud of my answer that year. And so I'm standing there going back to the same thing. It is what it is. Like, it's in God's hands at this point. And they say my name as Miss New Mexico, the announcer says, and your Miss New Mexico USA 2017 is ASHLEY MORA. And there's really no way that I can fully describe what I was feeling, because to work on something for 8 years and be told no so many times, and to have that dream become a reality in that moment was surreal. It was absolutely surreal. And I just remember like grabbing my face and I just started crying instantly. And I wanted to have all of these really cute pictures of like that moment, you know, like you finally win, you have the crown placed on your head. There's a lot of press there, so a lot of media coverage. And I could not stop crying. And I specifically remember one moment, it was the newspaper. They came to take the portrait for the newspaper that was gonna go out the next day. And I couldn't even smile because my lips were quivering so much. It was just, I couldn't stop crying. Yeah, and if you go back and you look at the pictures from when I won, and my director will actually say this too, she's like, no one has ever been so excited or had that kind of reaction before.
I love that so much, because you just worked so hard for it and you could just see how meaningful it was. I think when things like that happen, those are the things that exude in your photographs, right? Oh, there's nothing like when you watch it and you just see the reaction and you know it's just so heartfelt and like so well deserved. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
How do you think that winning Miss New Mexico kind of helped set you up for, you know, starting your blog and your podcast? And what do you think that you know, how that culminated together?
Well, I think that, so in my journey, right, it was 8 years, and I knew that in the year of me being Miss New Mexico and every year after that I felt like I had a special message to share with people, and that was to never give up on your dreams. And I think that, especially with like social media is the way that it is today, we get to see like the highlights, right, of everything that's going on. And so for me, I've always been very open about how hard each and every journey has been, or how unique each and every journey has been. And so I think that journey specifically provided me with the message to other people that it's going to be hard. Sometimes it's going to take way longer than you want. There are going to be days when you think, okay, this isn't for me. But if you just push through those difficult moments, on the other side of that, that is where your achievements come in. That is where you reach your goals. That's where the magic happens. And so my journey allowed me to give that message to other people. And for that, I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful, and I wouldn't change a thing about it.
Would you say then, like, that's what allowed you then to kind of come up with your blog name, that like heartfelt, you know, the journey, the process, sparkling from the inside out, and being able to share that with everybody else? Yeah,
it definitely attributed to the name. So my blog, Sparkling from the Inside Out, I've always wanted people to know that all the work stems from within. So, you know, you see all these things on the outside, but it's not even, it's mental health, but it's also taking care of your body. And when you have all of those things in alignment, that is what's going to exude on the outside with confidence and success, and, you know, being able to follow your dreams. You have to be like in alignment within. So that definitely helped me create the name Sparkling from the Inside Out. And then now I have recently launched my podcast,
I know.
the Pretty Happy Podcast. And it was so funny because I knew for a really long time that I wanted to start a podcast, but because I had done all these things in my life in my early 20s, Miss New Mexico, was on reality TV, I've worn many different hats. I had this feeling of like, if I were to ever do it, I feel like it's got to be perfect. And I am a perfectionist. So I felt like, you know, I had to have the perfect this, the perfect that, whatever it was. And I had a fear of failure. I didn't want to do something and have it fail. I didn't know how people would receive it. So I had all of these, fear of the unknown was like holding me back from this, until finally one day I was like, no, this has been a passion of mine and been on my heart for so long. I just need to do it. I just need to do it. And if it fails, so what? And then I came up with the name that was like, I had been trying so long to figure out what name I should pick. And it kind of just came like randomly to me one night. I had wrote down the name, I had done a vision board, and I wrote down the words, Pretty Happy Thoughts. And that's what I originally thought that I was gonna call it. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. Like, again, it kind of goes back to sparkling from the inside out, where the work stems within and all these things. And so then when I started actually working on like branding and marketing, I just changed it to Pretty Happy Podcast because that flowed a little bit better. But it all, Pretty Happy Podcast, sparkling from the inside out, and everything that I've done, it all kind of ties in together.
So this show is called Permission to Prosper. What does that mean to you?
I think that just means allowing yourself to go for it, whether you fail or you are successful. You know, I think that so many people would do so many different things with their life if they just allowed themselves to prosper in whatever it was that they did and not be afraid to go after it. And so what if you fall down? You fall down 9 times, you stand up 10, but give yourself that permission to do that.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Now, what would you say is your definition of being a prosperous woman?
I mean, I think that that's probably different for every person, but for me personally, especially right now in this moment of life, I would consider a prosperous life to be when you're touching the lives of other people and you're actually making an impact on other people's lives and encouraging them and inspiring them to go out and do better and be better and become their true confident self.
And what about that? How do you want to show up, I guess, in this world? And how do you feel that you're like making an impact and like kind of making your stamp?
So it's funny. I think that 2020 specifically, we've all kind of, been in quarantine and I think it's been probably a roller coaster ride for any of us.
Yeah.
But the one question that I asked myself, especially before when I started this podcast, was how do I want to make my mark on this world? And the answer for me is encouraging and inspiring other people. At the end of the day, like that is what makes me passionate. It's what fuels me. That is what like gets me out of bed in the morning, is knowing that I'm inspiring someone else to live their best life.
I love that so much. And, I think with social media, sometimes it can be a little bit deceiving because, we do only portray,
Right.
certain parts of it. And I think all of these other spaces allow you then different avenues to be able to share so much more about yourself and, all of that. I know that you had to deal so much with obviously judgment, right? Because you're literally putting yourself out on a stage for people to pick at you for all, for everything.
Right.
How do you feel that allowed you to build strength and, your mindset, a strong mindset throughout this entire process? Because I can only imagine, through a screen, you only have to deal with so much, but you're
Right.
physically there in person. I kind of want to know, what does that look like?
I think that especially in the context of judgment, I've always taken it more as constructive criticism rather than taking it personally. And I've tried to hold that very close to my heart. Even if someone's delivery is it might not necessarily feel good, but I know for the most part, people are just trying to help you become better. So like specifically when I was Miss New Mexico, I wouldn't go like cry when someone told me that I needed to work on a certain thing. I would just go, okay, they're trying to help me become better.
Exactly. Exactly. So it really allowed you to get out of your comfort zone
Yeah.
and try new things. What is that, stepping out of your comfort zone? What would you say, I think, was the most uncomfortable
Situation?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I was on a reality TV show that aired on E! It was called Catching Kelsey. It was very similar to The Bachelor, but rather than it being like The Bachelor, our Bachelor was Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs. I was so out of my comfort zone in that situation. And I think that a lot of people thought that I was going to be very comfortable in front of the cameras because of my background in pageantry, but I knew that this was going to air on national television.
Right.
And so there's a difference between being on camera for like, say, a news interview and being on camera for reality TV, because there's literally a camera in front of your face 24/7. They're filming every single little thing that you do. And so I felt like for me, I was completely out of my element in that situation. And I was just like so shy and so timid. But I learned so much from that experience. And I'm so glad that I was able to do that because it taught me a lot about myself. Also, I was very shy and timid in that situation, but I also stayed true to who I was. And after the show aired, I feel like I got so many people, especially from my hometown, saying, you know, we're so proud of you that you stayed true to yourself. So I was so like thankful for that because, you know, you never know how they're going to portray you.
Right.
In
And
those
that's what I was
situations.
just going to say is, you know, once the show actually aired, how did you feel about seeing yourself on camera and the way that they portrayed you?
I was actually very happy with the way that they portrayed me. And I was very like proud of myself for staying true to who I am, because you have a lot of outside influences in those situations. And I didn't allow any of those to change who I was or how I was acting.
And how did you deal with, you know, different people or responses from, you said you had a lot of support from your community, but did you get any like negativity? And if so, how did you deal with that?
From the show, I actually didn't get any negativity. And I think that was, again, because I stayed very true to who I was. So I wasn't one of the ones acting crazy or anything like that. But I mean, some of the girls, it was definitely hard to be around them because it was totally polar opposite
ball game. Yeah.
personalities. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you recently finished 75 Hard.
I did.
And well, first let's explain a little bit of what like 75 Hard entails, and then you can kind of go into your experience.
Okay. Yeah, so I did the 75 Hard Challenge, which was by Andy Frisella. It's 75 days of 2 45-minute workouts a day. One workout has to be outdoors. Drink a gallon of water, 10 pages of reading, take a progress photo, and sticking to a diet for 75 days, no cheat meals. And I had kind of hit this point in my life, and also just to kind of circle back to a question that you asked earlier about how I want to show up, I've always been very honest with people on my social media platform. So I had hit a point where I had hit my heaviest weight that I had ever been at, and I honestly didn't even know how it happened. It was like one day I just woke up and I didn't even recognize a person staring back at me, and I knew that I needed to make a change. And I also had all of this training and information from all the years that I had competed in Miss New Mexico. So I was like, okay, what do I want to do? Because I have all the training, I know what to do, but how am I going to actually implement this stuff in my life? And then I heard about the 75 Hard Challenge, and it just sounded great. I had done similar things before, but not as difficult as 75 Hard. And it was also incorporating drinking a gallon of water a day, reading 10 pages of a book a day, which I really liked. I liked that it was more of a mental toughness challenge than anything. And so I just kind of dove right in. I went for it. It was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done, if not the hardest thing that I've ever done, but it changed me. I 100% am not the same person I was when I started the challenge, and I'm so thankful for that experience.
Now, what do you think that you discovered about yourself in doing this challenge?
What I like to think happened is that I had become very like dusted with all of this like outside clutter from the outside world, and also just being very disconnected from who I was as a person. And so I feel like going through the challenge in the 75 days, it like brushed off that dust, and I was like able to see myself again. And it reminded me who I am and what I want to do and what my passion is and what my purpose in this life was. And I think that and I don't want to say it in like a bad context or anyway, but I think I had forgotten that for a little bit because I had become so complacent in where I was at the time. So it was like a couple years after I won Miss New Mexico, I got a job with the airlines, and I love my job so much. I love the company that I work for, and I will work there for the rest of my life. Again, not saying anything negative, but in my job specifically, there's no way to grow. Like, I'm a flight attendant, so there's no way you can become like the A+ flight attendant. There's no manager flight attendant. It's like you're in this spot, which was so nice for a while because I was always constantly like going for these goals and working so hard. And I was like, oh, this is nice. But then it got to a point where I was like way too complacent in what I was doing. And I realized that I don't like being complacent.
That's so funny. Now, since you've been working for the airlines, now you started this podcast. What do you think is the most exciting part about just venturing into this new space?
So it's funny because when I started the podcast, and so let me just say this. I love my job, but I don't necessarily get out of bed in the morning super excited and passionate about it. And I always wondered, like, is this what I'm meant to do for the rest of my life? What was the purpose of this? And I hadn't really figured that out yet. And then this year, I started my podcast. And I'm so excited because I feel like I find like all the dots are starting to connect. I feel like I have this job now where I can travel around the country because now I have this podcast where I want to interview people from every single state all over the world. And I have the opportunity to do that because I am a flight attendant. So I feel like all the stars are kind of aligning right now.
I love that. I mean, you're able to meet and connect with so many different people. What is it about your job that you think you appreciate the most of? What do you feel like is the biggest?
My job with the airlines.
Yes.
So for me, it is, traveling is a very stressful situation for people. And it doesn't even matter if you're on a small trip or a short trip. I think that traveling in general, it kind of boosts people's anxiety, even if the trip is really easy. And so for me, I like to be the person that brings peace to other people in a stressful situation. And I really appreciate that part of my job.
I love that. Now, going back to 75 Hard a little bit, and I know this kind of ties into your pageant, but how do you feel, going, I guess, having gone through this process, that it's changed your views on like your body image and just the way that you look at yourself and self-love?
So I think it's funny because even though I had hit my heaviest weight before 75 Hard, I didn't do it because I hated my body. Yes, I was bigger than I was before, but I didn't feel like uncomfortable about that. I still loved myself. The thing was I didn't feel healthy. And when I would go into workout classes that I did prior, when I hit my heaviest weight, and then I wasn't able to exercise the way that I was, and I've always been a very athletic person, and so I just didn't feel like I was healthy anymore. It's never been for me about hating my body. I've always been like very appreciative of my body for what it can do. And so, yeah, 75 Hard wasn't about like body image issues or anything like that.
Well, on that note, what is a guilty treat of yours that you love to indulge in?
Oh gosh, well, because I'm in Albuquerque this week, every time I come home to visit my parents, I have Dion's pizza.
Oh, yes.
It is like my guilty pleasure. If I'm coming in town late, I'll have my parents pick up Dion's so that I can have it when I get home. If they're closed when I get in. I am obsessive. There's nothing like it. It's so good. And if I'm not in Albuquerque, I would just say a simple, like, warm chocolate chip cookie. I've always been a chocolate chip cookie lover.
Is it from like a certain place, homemade,
no,
just in general?
Yeah, just in general. I like it to be like warm though, warm and soft.
Do you have your cookies with milk, or you just like
just plain? Yeah, just a plain chocolate chip cookie.
Okay. Now, what is your idea of a perfect day?
My idea of a perfect day. Well, right now I'm like definitely on this health kick. So I would say get up, do my morning routine. I have this cute little balcony off my apartment. So I like to go sit out there, have my coffee, do my gratitudes, because in the morning when I do my gratitudes, it just sets up my day.
Right.
Gets me in the right mindset. And then go work out. Work on some podcast stuff, get a good interview in, and then at night, my guilty pleasure is watching The Bachelor.
Really?
So maybe ending the night with some Bachelor.
I love that. I've never sat down I know everyone's gonna hate me, but I've never actually watched the Bachelor before. To sit and watch. I know that everyone's like, oh my gosh, you need to sit down and watch it, but I can't imagine so many girls are so crazy over it. I love that. Now, if you had to tell, yourself your first year of trying out for this pageant, if you had any tips or words of advice that you would give yourself, or if you were to go back now and even share with maybe some newcomers any words of advice, what would you?
I would probably just say the journey is going to be difficult, but it's going to be worth it. Keep it short and sweet, because those words are so powerful and so meaningful, and they're so true. And I think that goes for any journey. You know, it's going to be difficult. There's going to be some highs and some lows, but if you stick with it, it'll be worth it and the commitment will pay off.
I love that. Now, what are some obstacles that you would say that you had to deal with while you were going through just really anything in life, anything that you feel that you had to overcome in order to get yourself to this space?
You know, I think the biggest obstacle, I mean, there's been a lot, but the first one that comes to mind, especially just because we've been talking about like my career and the past things that I've done, is when I actually won Miss New Mexico. My year was a lot different than I thought that it was going to be. And so I think that realizing that things aren't always as they appear to be,
right,
but embracing that, and you just have to be able to go with the flow. And I feel like that's one of the most important things you can do in any aspect of your life, because you can be so focused on one thing and so set in your way, but if you're not able to like be flexible and go with the flow, you can really find yourself in a bind. But
what do you think has allowed you to kind of get into that headspace of being more flexible and like rolling with the punches and the change?
I think it's been from a place of not being flexible and, you know, having to learn the hard way that I need to be. You know, specifically the year that I won Miss New Mexico, that year was a very challenging year for me, personally and professionally. And again, I just thought that the year was going to be so different. And I think that if I would have just taken a moment to say, okay, this is what it is, I would have had a different feeling about it towards the end of my year rather than being disappointed.
I think self-awareness is so huge, right? And I think that's always the biggest factor in your evolution and your growth, right? Is, you know, you're still going to feel the feelings and the things will still happen in your life, but being aware of when it happens, how long you allow it to consume you.
Right.
I think all of those things are such beautiful things to be able to share with others. And I just think it's so amazing to be able to be aware of all of the things. Do you find that now we're closing the year, do you typically set up your year doing anything special, any new routines that you do, or do you have certain things that you do to kind of set yourself up with, you know, good intentions for the year?
So typically I don't have like a routine every single year that I do going into the new year. I mean, every year I'd probably set New Year's resolutions, but nothing very like meaningful or purposeful. However, I feel like this year I've learned so much about myself, and I've realized how important self-awareness is and how important it is taking pen to paper and writing out your visions.
Yeah.
And so it's not even necessarily that it's the new year, but I am going to be taking some time to do a vision board and writing out different things like my 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan, and actually taking a pen to paper and writing those things out. And I just think that there's a lot of power in like manifesting your dreams. And
100%.
Like my podcast is living proof of that. I did a vision board a month prior to launching it, and it ended up coming to life. So I'm all about it this year. I'm ready to see where this year takes me.
I'm here for it, girl. Do you have any positive affirmations or things that you like to tell yourself in difficult situations that you find help you kind of power through those moments of darkness?
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say I do have affirmations, but it's nothing like a specific affirmation that I came up with on my own. It's just like, I know in those moments I need to like take a step back. And I honestly think the biggest thing is gratitude, even more so than affirmations. But taking that moment and like realizing you wish that you had everything you had right now, like finding the small things to be grateful for. And in those, usually I can pull out affirmations like, I am strong, I am beautiful, I'm brave. And speaking those things out loud just does something to you. It changes you.
I 100% agree. I think it really changes your state. I think so many times you can spiral into just, you know, a ball of negativity or sadness, or just get into darkness when you don't allow yourself just a second to kind of look at it from a different perspective, right? And I think like we were talking about awareness, just being able to step outside for just a moment and not look at it through your own eyes, but just look at it for what it is and what, you know, I don't know if you're a religious person, but what God's trying to show you, or the universe is trying to bring to you. I think that all of those things are just so beautiful.
And so powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. What do you love most about your life right now?
Oh goodness. What do I love most about my life right now? I would say the fact that I'm living out my dream. and really putting myself out there and chasing after this wild dream that I had of starting this podcast and really giving it my all and my 100%. I mean, I'm totally obsessed with it. Like, I spend 15 hours some days working on it, and it just brings me so much joy. And I feel like right now at 29 years old, I am doing exactly what I'm meant to do. And that's truly the best feeling in the world.
What do you want to do more of in your life?
I mean, hopefully more of what I'm doing right now, but on a bigger scale. I have this vision of branding the Pretty Happy podcast into all of these different things. And so eventually I hope that it's not just a podcast platform. There's, so many different avenues of getting this like good information out to other people, and also providing a platform for other people to tell their stories and inspire other people.
I love that. Now, where do you find that you haven't allowed yourself permission to prosper, and it's something that you're continuing to work on?
Gosh. I mean, I would say prior to right now, it was chasing my dream because I was afraid of failure. I feel like I was stuck in that place for the longest time of like
How long would you say you were kind of stuck in that place?
3 years. Yeah, I knew for about 3 years that I wanted to do the podcast, and not even just do the podcast, but I think it was probably 3 years where I was very complacent in my life and not necessarily growing as an individual. And so I just, when you ask me that question, I reflect back to those moments specifically where it was like I knew that I had a bigger purpose, but I wasn't living that purpose. So, I would just encourage anyone who feels that they're in the same position to just go for it, because you will get so much value out of just going for it, and you'll be so proud of yourself for trying. And that is where the magic happens. That is where the change begins. And that is where you start creating this dream life that you've always wanted.
What would you say was the first step you took in giving yourself permission to prosper and just allowing yourself to step into your light?
So I wrote that vision board, and I think that actually writing down, like I always thought in my head, like I want to do a podcast, and I would always come up with like different names, and I would have all these different ideas, but I never actually took pen to paper. I never actually took time to actually making it meaningful. And so when I actually wrote down in 2020, I will start a podcast. This is what the name will be. Something clicked that night. And I swear, I think the next day, I had come up with the name, the branding. I had picked, all these different things. It was like, as soon as I had that moment of creativity, it just took off from there.
Who is someone that you want to have on the Pretty Happy podcast? Like just a goal person you'd love to hear from?
Oh gosh, like dreams are so big, right? Okay, so just the first person that came to my mind right now, and this is so funny, I don't know, do you watch reality TV at all?
No, not really.
Well, I think right now I would have to say Chrishell from Selling Sunset. She just was on Dancing with the Stars, but she's so beautiful inside and out. She also just had to face adversity. She went through a very public divorce, and obviously that situation in itself is very hard, but I was so impressed with the way that she carried herself through that situation. And she also has like a very crazy background. So I think that having her on and like being able to talk about how she dealt with that situation publicly, but still remain so positive and so inspirational through all of it would be really interesting. And then I also think I would like to have Andy Frisella, because I just did 75 Hard and would love to like sit down and talk with him. I also think it would be interesting because it's like Pretty Happy podcast, right? It's a very positive message. And if you've ever listened to his podcast, he's very vulgar. So it'd be very interesting to see the mesh of personalities.
I love that. Do you have any hidden talents that we don't know about?
I mean, I can snowboard. I don't know if a lot of people would think that looking at me, but growing up in New Mexico, I used to go snowboarding every winter season. So
what's something that, based off of your Instagram, people would not know about you?
I mean, I post a lot. So I feel like a lot of people know a lot about me, but I don't know, probably I'm a very sentimental person. So it's very hard for me to get rid of things. Like I'll have like a shirt and be like, I'm not a hoarder because my space is like very clean, but it's hard for me to get rid of things because I'm so sentimental.
They spark joy.
Yes, they spark joy. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Now, where would you say you're at right now in your journey?
I would say that I'm just getting started. I think that even before when I was Miss New Mexico, it was such a great experience, but I feel like right now I'm really living out my purpose. So it's a totally different feeling right now, and I feel like I'm on the right path. So, I mean, I just launched my podcast a month ago, and so yeah, I think this is just the start of it.
Scratching the surface. I love that so much. So please tell everyone where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is @RealAshleyMora. That's real, ASHLEYMORA. You can also find my podcast on all platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's just Pretty Happy Podcast. I also have a website, prettyhappypodcast.com.
I love that. Thank you so much for being with us today. Until next time.